Hi peeps, and welcome back to another Python basics video. I'm Zen, and in this video we are going to be looking at how to create the basic variable types in Python. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so in the previous JavaScript videos I spent quite a bit of time explaining some of the details of different types of variables and stuff like that. So in this Python video, I'm not going to go do that, because if you want that sort of detail, please look at those JavaScript videos. That's why I made them. So if we have a look at what we have in Python. So the first one we've got to look at is, of course, the string. And the way you create variables in JavaScript, and so in this case with a string, is we define our variable first. Okay, and to do that you just declare the name of the variable. Okay, so as long as it's not a reserved name such as print, it will instantly become a variable. And so then we have the equal sign and then the value. And again, in Python we use double quotes for strings. Can you use the other ones? Well, try and find out. So let's do this. Mr. Ives is awesome. Okay, and unlike JavaScript, there is no terminator, there is no semicolon at the end. Now we can check to see if this is right by first of all, we can print message and see if it comes out okay, and then after that we can do a Python version of type off, which actually is just easier because it is just type. Okay, oops, would help if I can spell, of course. So what we're expecting to see is, first of all, down here, Mr. Ives is awesome, and then underneath we are hoping to see a declaration of a string. So let's save that, and then down here. Now when you're in terminal, if you just want to repeat the last command, you can just use the up arrow key for it to be there again. So there we go, and we press enter, and we see here Mr. Ives is awesome, which is true, and then the type of our message is a string, and that is how you create strings in Python. And just like in JavaScript, Python doesn't have a default character primitive. Okay, so if you just want to do a character type, then just like we did in JavaScript, we do like the variable name and then the value, and we just put in a single character, so E. And then again we can do the same thing, so we can do print my char and then print type my char. Now what you'll notice slightly different in these printouts is that there is no line number associated with them. So what we can do, what we often do, is actually to print an empty value afterwards, so we can actually just be able to see the messages better. So again, we save that, come down into here, up arrow, run it. Oh, and it tells me I've got an error, and that is because I didn't put in my underscore. So we'll just correct that, save it, back into here. Okay, so Mr. Ives is awesome, string, E, string. Now just go back to that error. This is quite interesting, because when it was my char, it says name my char is not defined, so it must have a value, okay, because it didn't like it. Now we can try this. Can we initiate a variable in Python without giving it a value? So let's try my test. and then what we're going to do is, rather than print out its value, see if it comes up as anything in the print. So again, we save it, come down here, let's scroll down to the latest one, and run it. And you can see that line 11, my test is not defined. So in Python, you can't have a what they'll class as an undeclared variable. It must be defined with a value. Okay, so that's a nice one to learn. So that's strings, nice and simple. Well, what else can we do? Well, we can also do numbers. How do we do that? Well, it should be no surprise to you that it is exactly the same. So let's do basic gravity equals 10. And then, as we did before, we can print this and then print out the type. And then print out an empty one, so we've got space. So again, we're going to save this, come down to the bottom, up arrow, and we can see it's a class of an integer. So not only has it recognized it as a number, it's recognized it as an integer. Okay, so let's just try it with a fixed point. So let's do it with a fixed point value and print, and then let's print out the type like we've done before. Let's save it with Control S, down to the console, up button, and notice it calls it a float. So it doesn't call it a fixed point, it classes it as a float. And this is one of the things that kind of annoys me in Python, because that's not a floating number. Okay, there's no times 10 to the power or e to the power. Okay, that is a fixed point. And for those of you who aren't quite sure what is the actual difference between it, a fixed point number is where the fractional point separates the whole number to the fractional part of the number. Whereas in a floating point or a standard form, the fractional point separates the first significant figure to the second. So what I mean by that is, if we had heavy grav 98.12, okay, so that's what we've done before, and let's put in the empty print, which I didn't do on that one. And again, we save it, come down here, up arrow, press enter. You see, that's definitely not a float, because that fractional point is in the wrong place. It may be saving it internally as a float, and that's fine, but that is technically a fixed point. Okay, but can you store a fixed point in Python? And the answer is yes, you can. And the format is in fact again the same as what we did in JavaScript, more or less. So let's call it float grav equals, and again you use the fractional point between the first and second significant figure, and then instead of using times 10 we use the number e and then the value. In this case it's going to be 1, because we want to move that fractional point over one part. to the right. And then again we do print, and we're going to call this what, float graph, and then print type, and then we're going to print our space, and we're going to save it. We're going to jump down here and we're going to run it, and there you go. You see, this is the second one, because that's the one we did originally, which is normal, which is heavy graph. And then here you can see it's translated it from the standard form into a fixed point form. Okay, so it can store it, and you can use the same method as we did in JavaScript. We've also had a slight difference in the syntax. Like I said, in Python there is no let, var, const or anything like that. There is no semicolon at the end of the line either. So the next variable type we're going to look at here is the humble boolean. Does it support boolean? Yes, it does. And you know, it's fairly straightforward. It uses the same setup as before. So variable name, and then the equal sign and the value. Notice here I'm using a capital T, and we'll see if this makes a difference or not. So we go print, am I awesome, and then print of the type, and then save some time. We're going to do it the other way as well, as in lowercase. So now, did you notice that even though I haven't got the linters installed, it changed it from a lowercase t to an uppercase T? And then when I've left it as a lowercase, where I corrected it, it's kept it white, which is the same color as the variable name over here, which, if you remember from JavaScript, that would imply that it thinks that this is a variable, and we're probably going to get an error come up, which is a bit unfair because I'm pretty sure you are awesome as well. But you know, I don't make the rules. But let's try this. Print, you're awesome. Print type, you're awesome. Print. Yeah, it looks like I've, oops, just closing all my brackets. So let's save that, bring it down here, forward, go. So as we thought, line 35, oops, I've missed out the bracket there as well. So let's save that one and try it again. So we can see here that after a float, we had a true class bool, which was this one, am I awesome? And then we can see straight away that name true is not defined. Because the T is lowercase, it breaks the Boolean tracking. So putting it to a capital T, saving it, running it again, works fine. And of course, this is not true, but I'm going to put false in just so we can see it does recognize both. Okay, so that's it. We've got string, character, integer, fixed point, floating point, Boolean. The last thing we're going to do in this video is the array. Now, Python, being Python, wanted to do things different. And if I remember correctly, they don't call them arrays, they call them lists. But the way we create them is exactly the same. Okay, they just wanted a slightly different name because, well, because he did. So again, we can create an empty string we can create an array, and we can create a array with values in it. So first of all, an empty array would be, again, the variable name equals, and the same square brackets that we use in JavaScript, which is great because we don't have to think about special syntax. And then we can do the standard print of ideas. Now this is interesting because you go, well, I didn't think we were allowed empty variables, but this is where it gets a bit sort of different. You can have empty arrays because it understands arrays need to be filled up, and you may be filling it up from a database or something, so it does allow for this. So again, print type ideas. Okay, we'll just prove this first. Going back down here, up, there we go. See, it's an empty array. It's a class list because I like to call it a list. Okay, so let's just do one with it filled in, and here we're going to do fruit. And to be fair, I agree with Python on this. It does use the square brackets for it. Banana. Yes, I know there's too many NAs, but I like it like that. And then apple. And just to make a point, 15. Cut. And as you can see, the syntax is very consistent with the one in JavaScript. You know, the difference is it's using square brackets, which I quite frankly do approve of. And you can see we're mixing numerical values along with strings, and we're just separating each value with a comma. Print fruit. Print type fruit. Okay, and then we'll save that. Come down to the bottom, arrow up, and there we have it. See, banana, apple, 15, apricot. Now, how do you access a value? That's a good question. So the way that we find a single value in the array is actually the same method as we'd again use in JavaScript. So we use our printout first, and then it is the array name or list name, and then we use the square brackets using a zero ordered list. So fruit 1 will actually be the second value, which, because banana is 0, so 0, 1, so we should get apple. So again, we save this, and we'll check it, and there we go, we get apple as it is the second value in the list. So there you have it. We've done strings, we've done numbers, we've done boolean, and we have done lists or arrays. And the only thing we've got left to do are objects, and we're going to do that in the next video, so join me then. So this is the end of this video. As always, I really hope it's been useful. Please don't forget to comment, ask questions below. You know what all those other buttons do. I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm Zen, signing out.